Hello everyone, it's the Metal Geek. How y'all doing? Today, we're going to be taking a look at this. This is a prop replica of the 11th Doctor's sonic screwdriver. And when I say prop replica, I'm not talking about this. This is the toy version of the 11th Doctor sonic screwdriver. And we're going to get a bit more into this in just a minute. But you may remember that I already did a review on this back some time ago. It was actually one of my first reviews on this channel. So with that said, what's the difference between these two models? Well, we're going to take a look at that. And while I don't own the Celestial toy version of the replica, nor do I own the Nick Roberto version of it, I have seen a lot of reviews on these two units, so we also are going to do a bit of a comparison there. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Geeks Retro Underground presents the 11th and the 12th Doctor's sonic screwdriver prop replica. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Celestial toy version of this replica, as well as the Nick Roberto version of it. Now, let's be clear, Nick Roberto was the original prop designer for this screwdriver, which means Nick Roberto actually built the prop that Matt Smith was using on set. Well, I should say props, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So his versions tend to come out to be the most expensive, as they're all hand-built and they're made with the molds that made the original units. But they also aren't without their flaws based on a lot of reviews that I've seen. Well, again, we'll get into that in a few moments. The Celestial toy version is the one that really, a lot of people tend to think it's the best on the market. It's very screen accurate and very durable, though I have heard that there are some issues with that one as well. The one we're looking at today is the Wand Company's version of it. Now, where the Nick Roberto version, as well as the Celestial toy version, are both very expensive, upwards of $1,000 or more, the Wand Company sells this one for only about $100 to $150, depending on where you buy it from. Now, you're probably thinking, damn, Metal Geek, $100 is still pretty expensive for a prop replica. Well, maybe, but it's not $1,000, it's not $1,300, $100 in comparison to the other prop models. This is the cheapest, and it's actually one of the best, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. Now, what makes this model so nice is that it's not cheap plastic. It is actual die-cast metal. When you pick this thing up, it actually has heft to it. I mean, in all sincerity, this is a very, very heavy piece. Now, this is where we're going to get a little bit into the comparisons to the other models. So, let's take a look. These claws are amazing. Look how close they are to the emitter. It actually just looks really amazing. It looks like the actual prop from the TV show. And we will get a bit more into this, but moving down here to the middle section, the core, take a look at the silver section. Not only is it well detailed, but if you look very closely, you can see that they aged it. It looks like this sonic screwdriver has been used. So you can see little dark swirls in it, specks, stuff like that. It just kind of gives it a really nice look. It kind of makes it look a little aged. It makes it look a little bit more steampunk. And here, the copper parts, well, while the Celestial toy version and the Nick Roberto version are pretty much the same color, it's not as polished and it looks a little bit older. They aged it a little bit more. This is a little bit more polished, a little bit more new looking. So what they did with the silver, they didn't do so much with the copper. Now what you're going to notice here is that there's these little indents. Now these are rivets, or they're representational of rivets. And the Nick Rubbertoe and the Celestial Toy version actually used rivets, or at least something that was raised to make it look like it was rivets. Here it's just indents and colored over, and it doesn't pop as much. So that is something that is a little disappointing, but it's not like it's a gigantic deal breaker. In fact, it's not even a deal breaker at all, because at least it's still there and it looks nice, but just a little bit screen inaccurate. Moving down to the leather section, this is a thing of beauty. And now I know this isn't 100% screen accurate. I know that the one that Matt Smith used on set had the emitter button a little bit lower, and it was like a square piece of silver with a button on the top. Here, the one company chose to incorporate the button into the leather, and in my opinion, it might not be screen accurate, but it actually looks a little bit better. It looks a little less tacky. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the prop of the original is tacky, but I just think that this makes this look a little bit more polished because the button is incorporated right into the leather section. Now if you flip it around to the back side, you can see that the stitching is still there. It's a little bit more accurate on the Celestial Toy version as well as the Nick Rubbertoe, as it's a little bit messier and a little bit more makeshift, where this is a little on the neater side. Again, just kind of giving this whole section a little bit more polish on this particular model. But right here, this right here is amazing. Now, the reason why I consider this amazing is because of a couple things. On the Nick Rubbertoe version and the Celestial Toy version, the handle is an aged yellow, and the reason for that is because the original prop was white, but after a certain amount of use, it actually started to age and become yellow. So what the one company did here is that it is an off-white, it's not a pure white, so it does look aged, but if you look very closely, you can see these little black flecks in there, like these little speckles. It actually gives this whole section a very ceramic or marble-like feel to it, and it just looks amazing. Now, the other thing here, that it omits the screw that was originally on the prop. Now, I like that that is not on here because it really did, in my opinion, kind of make it look tacky. Now, while it would have been more screen accurate to add it to this model, I actually always did think that that was an eyesore. So it's nice to actually have this very nice looking handle and not have that screw popping out right in your face. So there's points to it there. Again, not screen accurate in that respect, but it is, in my opinion, an improvement. Now at the bottom of the handle is basically the copper end piece. Now the Celestial Toy version, again, as well as the Nick Rubbertoe version, is a bit more aged, while this is a bit more polished. With that said, it's pretty accurate. It isn't really all that different. So yeah. But how does the one company's version of this replica compete with the $1,000 plus replicas that are out there? This is actually one of the best replicas, even when it comes to competing with the Celestial Toy version and the Nick Rubbertoe version. And here are the reasons why. Now, we already know that this version isn't as screen accurate as the other two models are. But one thing that has always held this back from being one of the best when it comes to replicas of this particular sonic screwdriver is that the Nick Rubbertoe version, as well as the Celestial Toy version, you can flick it open. In other words, you give the sonic screwdriver a little flick and click. The one company's version of this was a little different. This is actually a universal TV remote, though they built it to look as good as it is so that people could cosplay with it as well. This version of the sonic screwdriver has a lot of different modes on it, but the big thing is that this version has an FX mode, as in when it's in that mode, it could actually be used as a prop replica, that you could actually access the sonic screwdriver sounds and the emitter lights up and all kinds of stuff. But because it's a universal remote, the extend feature was not present. And that is one of the key features for this particular sonic screwdriver. Everyone wants to flick this thing open. So if you're missing that feature, as nice as this looks, it just won't compete with the $1,000 models. But I do hope you notice that I've been using a lot of past tense in my speech, and that's because version 1 didn't flick open, but this version, this one does. Realizing that they really needed to add this feature if they really wanted to compete on the replica level, the one company created version 2 of this. Now, if you look at the box, it says that this is the 12th Doctor sonic screwdriver, which whenever there's a revision that adds things to these screwdrivers that weren't in previous models, I tend to find that they just label it the 12th Doctors. And while Peter Capaldi did use this on the show, this is more prominent with Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. So again, now that you could actually flick this open, that sincerely puts this on the same plateau as those $1,000 models. And now that you know that this can extend, let's take a look at the detail on the inside of the core. The inside of the core is plastic, but it looks like resin. Here, the one company did a really good job adding that milky green, marble-like look. You can see the white specks in it as well as the white swirls. Now, the emitter at the top is a clear emerald lens. Some people will say that this is screen inaccurate, as the prop that Matt Smith used actually used a milky green lens with swirls in it, much like the core on the inside. But that's not entirely true. Matt Smith actually had 3 props, and one of the 3 actually does have a clear emerald tip on it, so I guess that makes us a little closer to screen accurate than what some people thought. Now look here at the claws. Now, the claws are amazing on this thing. I said it once and I'll say it again. When it's in the closed mode, it's very close to the emitter and it looks great. But when it's in extended form, it looks even better because these claws, again, they don't shake, they don't move. And look at the spring on these things. I mean, look at this. And if you look a little closer on the inside, you could actually see the springs that they use for the claws. The one company did a wonderful job with this. All these little finite details really do put the one company's replica right up there with the best, at just a fraction of the cost. More so, the Nick Roberto version doesn't even have FX sounds. If you want that, you have to pay like an extra $140 more. And you only get one FX sound. Now, in comparison to the toy, well, first and foremost, there were 3 different versions of the toy made. There's this version here. As you can see, the claws really they're not that accurate. They should be a lot closer to the emitter. When you get to the middle core section, there's a decent amount of detail in the silver. Again, it's just plastic, but they add these weird rivets down below that didn't exist on any version of the sonic screwdriver. Now, they did a decent enough job on the leather section, even though it's just plastic, though they did put the stitching on the same side as the button, which is not the case on the original prop. The stitching should be on the back and the button should be on the top. And there's also 2 buttons here, one to extend the sonic screwdriver, and the other one to access the sonic screwdriver functions, such as lighting up the emitter and performing the FX sounds. The handle here is a pure white, there's no sign of aging or any flex, and it's a little bit longer than it should be, but it's not a terrible representation. And then the lower half here, again, is pretty basic. It looks fairly the same. Again, it's just that while with the Celestial Toy version and the Nick Roberto version, it's a little bit of an aged look to it, and the one company's version is very polished. This one, unfortunately, is just a little bit dull because the paint doesn't quite shine. And again, there are 2 other models to this toy. This is the one button push one, where the original version of this model, this button could not function in extended mode, so there was a cap at the bottom of it, and underneath that cap is a red button that you could push to access the sonic features. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that that is actually screen accurate, as Matt Smith's original prop did actually have this cap on it and this button below. It was just never used on the show, so later prop models, they removed it. And then there's this version that, well, it's touch sensitive. I don't care for it that much. It has this cap on the back for the batteries, and it's just a big eyesore. It looks terrible. And the touch features are either too sensitive or they just don't work at all, and it's very, very frustrating. So as you can see, the One Company version of this is just leagues above the toy. Now, if I were to make one complaint about this particular model, is that the claws do pop open just a little too easy at times. Again, it's not a deal breaker. It's not that annoying, and it's actually really nice because I can still give it a good 11th Doctor flip, and oh, that sound is so satisfying. And it's functional. You could actually turn your TV off with it. I'm giving this prop model a 9.9 out of 10. And this is the Metal Geek saying, have a great one, guys. I wonder what happens if I use two settings at the same time.